It's the winter of 2015. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm sitting in a Starbucks with my laptop open. Now, class starts in 2 hours, and I have no idea what I'm going to teach that day. At this point, I've got 5 preps, and my whole teaching career feels like trying to grab a yoga ball covered in baby oil. No matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to get a hold of it. And what I want more than anything is to be loved by my students, and that drive has made me into a performer. Like every day I'm shouting, I'm whispering, I'm telling funny stories, I'm jumping up on tables, all in an effort to make that class the most memorable class I can make it. And so far, it's working. At the end of the year, students write me notes saying that my class has made them love history, that I'm the best teacher they've ever had, and there's something deeply satisfying about that. But the performance has worn me down to a nub, and so I'm sitting in that Starbucks frantically clicking around my old lesson plans, and I find nothing. So I start clicking around Teachers Pay Teachers, and I can find nothing. And it's 7 o'clock by now, and the panic is starting to rise. I have absolutely nothing to bring them today, and I'm starting to despair that I'm going to find anything at all. And if I have nothing to bring them, then I'm afraid I'm going to bore them. And if I bore them, then I won't be that great teacher anymore. And so by 7:15, my fear has mixed with despair, and finally the time has run out. So I just choose an old lesson plan that I've taught before that I think is kind of related, and I think I can pull off with some degree of flair. So I close my laptop, pack up, I drive to school, I'm in my classroom. The bell rings, the students settle, and although I am definitely strung out, I conjure the performer and start in on the lesson plan. But instead of seeing faces of astonishment and engagement, I see the students looking sideways at each other, like looking confused, which, okay, fine, no problem. I just increase the intensity with which I'm delivering the lesson, and that causes some of them to look down, as if they're ashamed or maybe they feel sorry for someone. And finally, a girl in the back named Anna hesitantly raises her hand, and I call on her, and she says, Mr. Heimler, and then she pauses. I think this is the same lesson you taught us yesterday. Now, I know that's not true. I mean, I think I would remember if I taught a lesson yesterday. And then another hand went up and it said, this is the lesson you taught yesterday, Mr. Heimler. And heads start nodding in agreement across the room. And that's when I stopped. And a great fear swept over me. Like I'm racking my brain. I have no memory of teaching this lesson, but the external evidence suggests pretty strongly that I did. Like, am I really that strung out that I can't remember what happened the day before? So, what am I supposed to do? We've got an hour left in class, and if I scrap this lesson plan, I've got nothing to fill that time. And at that moment, not only am I afraid, I'm deeply embarrassed. Like the exhausting work that I've done to perform well and be the best teacher these kids have ever had has, in a moment, been stripped away from me, and I feel like I'm just standing there naked. So they're staring at me, like waiting for what comes next. And in that moment, I close my computer, put all my notes in my bag, I sit on a stool, and I'm just honest with them. I tell them, I'm sorry that, my teaching schedule has got the better of me. But we have an hour of class left, and so after a long moment, I say, okay, what questions do you have? And no one raises their hand. So I clarify, the questions don't have to be about history. They can be about, your life or about me or whatever. And no one is talking. And inside, I've already started calculating, what other careers I might be suited for. And that's when Anna, who raised her hand in the beginning, said, how do you know what you're supposed to do with your life? And so I tell her about my own life and how I've tried to answer that question, and she smiles and she nods her head. And then another student asks, what if I don't get into the college that I want to attend? And we start talking about that, and we start talking about hopes and dreams. And after that, more questions. How did you meet your wife? How did you know that she was the one? And as we were talking, I could see them starting to lean in, because no teacher had ever allowed them to ask such questions in class. And then the bell rings. The students stand up and they hesitate for a moment, as if they don't want to leave this moment that we just created, but they finally do. And on the way out, Anna stops and says to me, Mr. Heimler, this is the best class we've ever had. And she leaves, and I tear up, because that's when I realized that in the endless cycle of performing for my students, I missed what it is that truly makes for a good teacher. Someone who cares for their students and who acknowledges that their lives are bigger and more complex than my classroom. And so that meant I could set the performance aside because they never wanted a performance anyway. They wanted someone to say, I see you. I care about what matters to you. And so, on the day when my teaching failed, that's the day I became the kind of teacher that I've always wanted to be.